Okay, so let's get out your reading questions. I accidentally, when I taught yesterday, I left my my teaching notes in the pile of papers that I collected, and so it's sitting on my dresser at home. Well, you know what you can do, instead of giving it to me, you can just, somebody can shout out to me like what the next question is. Is Van Breck, would somebody just shout out to me what the first question is? Yeah, Ella, go for it. Okay, John Knox, about whom you read this week. Where did he study? Who did he study under, and where did he get his ideas? Yeah, I'll let Lauren do it. No, he was a forerunner. But where do you think, Ella? Okay, Calvin. Calvin in Geneva. That's what I was going for. Oh, follow. Oh, okay, thank you. I'm going to just borrow Bailey's questions. You're right. That was poorly worded, because follow can mean be a disciple of, and follow can mean just come after in time. That was an ambiguous wording. But so George Wishart would be a right answer to follow because he came first. But I was going for Geneva, influenced by Calvin's work at Geneva. Knox drew up rules and regulations for civil as well as church life. What does that mean? He drew up rules for civil as well as church life. What is civil life? Laws for the town. Civil, we get civilian, it comes from, citizen comes from the same Latin word. It means your government. He set up laws for the government. Just like, do you remember, I don't know if we talked about it much, John Calvin in Geneva made laws that people had to follow that we would consider have nothing to do with the church. Laws about morality. Like there's certain things you could do or not do in Geneva. You were allowed to do it or you weren't allowed to do it. And some of the groups that followed his example, like the Puritans, Puritans kind of get a bad rap. They weren't as straight-laced as everybody paints them to be. However, they were very strict, and they did not celebrate Christmas. I know, because it was associated with a certain amount of partying. And it still is. I mean, even we're not getting drunk and putting lampshades on our heads, I hope, at Christmas. But we are, if your family approves of this, a good bottle of wine, or, at the very least, eggnog and really rich cookies that you don't normally eat at other times of year, and maybe staying up a little later and, having fun. And they just did not think that was appropriate in association with the birth of Christ. So they just did not observe it at all. No, and as a matter of fact, if you read William Bradford's book of Plymouth Plantation, William Bradford was the first governor, well, he wasn't, the former governor died, but he was governor for longer than anyone else at Plymouth. And he wrote a book about what happened, about their travels, and about what happened in those first, 20 years when they came to the New World. And at one point, he mentions December 25th, and nothing happened. Like, he doesn't mention it as Christmas. It's not a day they were observing. Yes, right. No. It is, but you know what? I feel like did you notice? Okay, I think this is the next question. Yes, it is. How did Luther and Calvin differ in their opinions of what might be taught? Yeah, Jesse. Yes. So do you hear the difference? Luther is saying, if the Bible doesn't disagree with it, it's okay. And Calvin is saying, if it's not in the Bible, you don't do it. And we are told, you know, in Scripture to meet regularly for the purpose of taking communion, right? So we do that. You know what? I suddenly wonder how they felt about Easter. Because the observation of the resurrection is also not commanded in the Bible. But you know, the observation of Jesus' birth is nowhere. And so I think that's the idea. Well, the Bible doesn't tell us to do that, so we're not going to do that. I don't know what they did for Easter. Yeah, Rhett. Did they celebrate anything? I do not know. I do not know what they celebrated, Rhett. That's a very good question. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses are a group today. They're. I'm just going to be boldly and say they're not a Christian. They're a heretical Christian group. They're an offshoot. They don't celebrate birthdays, or I know it's shocking. You're safe from becoming a Jehovah's Witness ever. They don't celebrate anything. Yes. You know, also it was a pushback, Rhett, because the Catholic Church has a lot of festive days. The Orthodox Church has a lot of festive days. Every time you observe the death, I know it seems odd to observe someone's death, but for us, the death of someone is their birth in heaven. Do you see what I mean? It's the beginning of their new life. And so many of the people celebrated were martyrs. And so not only was their death the beginning of their new life, but it was glorious victory over Satan by resisting unto death. And so they would celebrate those. And they would have feast days, like special church services, but people would have, they call them feast days for a reason. Because you have something really good to eat, you know? And so, so even today in the, like in the Orthodox Church, the Lenten fast is very strict. There's a lot of things you don't eat for a long time. But after Easter, there's no fasting, even on the normal fasting days, because it's a celebration time, it's a feast time. And so maybe the Puritans saw all this festivity and they thought it was kind of bound up with what they thought was wrong with the church, and they disapproved of it. Anyway, back to Calvin. He made a lot of laws about what you could do and not do. And John Knox did the same thing in Scotland. And there was, okay, let me tell you the story of Scotland. Yes, Jesse. Hey guys. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Many years ago, I went with my husband to Indiana, somewhere in south of Indianapolis, and it was called Connor Prairie, and it was like Bishop Hill. It was one of these reenactment sort of places, you know, where they go. And so we did the Christmas walk. We went with another couple, and they had candles lighting. So it's like a 17th, 18th century, I guess, American colonial village, all right? It's set up like that. People are dressed like that, and they act the parts, all right? But you went from house to house, and you observed Christmas with them. And so I remember, it was very cool. So you follow the paths with the candles, and you would go, and I remember one house, they were a wealthy family, and they actually had a piano. And she had us all come around, and she played a Christmas carol, and we sang, and they had gingerbread cookies laid out that she had baked, you know. But then we went to another path, and I remember there was a guy, and it was an old man, and he was kind of Scroogey, you know, but he was in bed already. All right, so he was tucked up and like, ah, these people and their Christmas is a wicked, wicked, wicked observation of Christmas, and I don't understand. And he went off on why his neighbors should not be, engaging in frivolity, that it wasn't appropriate. It was very amusing, but it reminded me of that when he said, what would it be like to talk to them? He was not very amusing, except in a way his character didn't mean to be. Yeah. Yeah, they talked to us. I mean, you could ask them questions. You couldn't grill them because it was a set. You had a path you had to walk through, but yeah, it was very cool. They do this also at Plymouth Plantation. If you ever get to go to Massachusetts, the people, okay, I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with today. Let's go back to John Knox. Let me tell you something about Scotland, because John Knox came into conflict with the Queen of Scotland. We know her as Mary, Queen of Scots. She is not to be confused with Bloody Mary. It is unfortunate that they are both Mary. Bloody Mary is the daughter of Henry VIII, whose mother got the shaft in that divorce, and who grew up very staunchly Catholic, and then came back to take over after her brother Edward died and executed people. Mary of Scotland, her dad was King of Scotland, King James, and the sixth, I think. And he died when she was 6 days old. And are you familiar with the concept that's still true in England, that just because you're the king doesn't mean your wife gets to be called queen, like you're the queen consort? Or, for example, Queen Elizabeth, who's Queen of England today, her husband Philip, who died last year, they referred to him as Prince Philip. If Elizabeth had died before him, he wouldn't be king. He would never be king because he's not of that family. He's only by marriage. Does that make sense? So when just a second, Jesse, when Mary's dad died, her mom didn't automatically get to be queen. Does that make sense? Yeah, Jesse, what did you want to say? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's rules about this. So Mary's mother, who's also named Mary, Mary of Guise, she did not get to be queen, but she, obviously a 6-day-old baby can't rule, can't even hold up their head by themselves. They really can't give orders. So Mary became the regent, ruling in her place, along with some other people. But, it was a problem because you can imagine, I'm sure, say we're a country and our ruler is a baby. Okay? And so maybe we're all okay and we're obedient, but these gentlemen over there, they look shifty to me, all 4 of them. And I feel like they might say, I'll help rule instead of the baby, and not because they just love the baby. And not just because they love Scotland, maybe because they want to get their hands on some power, right? And so, you know what? And if the baby were to tragically die, so much the better for the people who have the power. So there's a little bit of danger to the baby, and there's a little bit of danger of the people who want to take charge. So they were always trying to keep Mary safe, and keeping her in various places. But finally, well, they tried to marry her off. They said, well, we'll get you engaged to Edward, Henry VIII's son Edward, then Edward dies. It would be more like a cousin. No, this is the other Mary. We're not Bloody Mary. This is Mary of Scotland, okay? They're cousins. They actually go back to Henry VII, the two lines. So they're pretty diverged. So they're not too close. And so Edward dies. So they said, okay, we're going to engage you to the prince in France. Francis the first son, also called Francis. And so, you know what? You're going to be the Queen of France someday, so we might as well just send you there now. So when she was 5 years old, they just sent her to France. I know. So, he was little too, but they didn't get married right away. They got married when they were 15. She was 15, okay? So she was there 10 years. So she learned French, and she learned the ways of the French court, and she was trained in all the niceties that women were trained in, and and in drawing and not as much stitchery, sewing, yes. And then they got married, and then he died. She has no luck at all. He died, apparently, this is horrifying, from a massive middle ear infection that then went into his brain. I know. If you have a sore ear, go to the doctor. No, we have antibiotics now. This doesn't happen. But it killed him. It killed him. The infection killed him. And so what? Oh no, it was like a couple years. I mean, not a long time, but more than a year. And so what's she going to do? She's not queen without him. They have no children. Well, no, they're 15. They could technically have children, but they don't. So she goes home to Scotland. Home, a term being used very loosely, because think about what you remember before you were 5. Okay, so a lot of people have really some vivid memories. A lot of people remember almost nothing from when they were little. I have selected memory. I'm a lot farther down the path than you, but I have selected memories. But if you ask me of stuff that happened before I was 5, I'm a little shaky on that. And so imagine, she hasn't seen Scotland since she was 5. And now she's 17, 18. She doesn't know these people. She doesn't really know the ways of Scotland, the ways that, the customs, the prevailing attitudes. Do you know what I mean? The way people think it's polite to act. She doesn't know. Yeah, Jesse.
I would think that would make sense. Like you have lots of
Well, that's true, but it's not so much good manners as the correct manners. Do you know what I mean? Like every court or every country would have its own. What are you allowed to do, and not be looked down on? What's appropriate? You know, part of what makes our culture. And she didn't know it, but she went back, and she's Queen of Scotland. She is now Queen of Scotland. She's grown up. Her mom has died. Her dad, died a long time ago. She is the heir to the throne of Scotland. And so she's coming back to a country she doesn't really know, and she's going to be queen. Yeah, Brett, what did you want to say? So John Knox is there. This brings us full circle back around to John Knox. John Knox is very busy doing what he really in his heart believes is best. Say again. Yeah. So John Knox, first of all, wrote a book with the most lively title of a book, maybe not, but it's got to be up there in the top 10. A trumpet blast against the monstrous regiment of women. And regiment in this case did not mean what you think it means, like a group, like a troop, a regiment of soldiers. It means ruling, rulership. A trumpet blast against rulership by women. He didn't think women should be rulers of countries. He just thought that was wrong. And Mary wasn't the only one. There were other countries in Europe that had queens. Denmark had a very intelligent, I think her name was Catherine too, very intelligent woman as queen. But he didn't think it was right. Yeah, Matthias. I don't know. Good luck. Good luck. I have never read this book. I don't know how long. You know what? I bet if you Googled it, I bet it's a PDF online. I bet you can read it free online. If anybody does, tell me. Okay, so he already didn't like Mary because she was a woman and she was ruling. But Mary grew up in France, in Catholic France. And Mary just didn't understand that the winds had changed in Scotland while she was gone, and that people weren't all just loving the Catholic Church anymore. England had broken with the church and had its own church, And lots of people were clamoring for more reform and more reform and more change. She didn't understand. And she bless her little heart, she like, can't we just all get along? Can't we? I promise I won't be mean to you if you want to do that, but I'm going to go to Mass. I'm going to have my church and you could have your church. It's okay. I'm not mad at anybody. She didn't get it. And she invited John Knox to come talk to her. And they had actual conversation. I would like to be a fly on the wall listening to that conversation, but that was interesting. But yeah, but they couldn't, they were talking past each other. You see, he did not understand her at all, as she did not understand him. Yeah. It is. I'm going to move my chair. Oh yeah, well the Catholic Church is still there. Oh no. Oh no. In Scotland. No, I mean there's still, no, they haven't, they're their own government. Just because England broke with the church doesn't mean that Scotland has to, but it was in the process of it. Yeah. Yeah, but you know what, Rhett, since she was the queen, I'm guessing she had her own private chapel. I'm guessing she could, I feel like even if all the churches were gone, she could still have her own private chapel and her own private royal priest. Does that make sense? But as far as I know, they were still, they hadn't abolished Catholic worship. Or she would be in trouble, do you see? And also they couldn't do it without her consent. She's the queen. So eventually though, she ran off. She had to flee Scotland. And here are the reasons why. Reason number one, the lesser reason, was antagonism from John Knox and the reformers. All right? They just made her life miserable. I'm sorry, I'm not painting a very nice picture of John Knox at all. But the other problem is the soap opera story of Mary Stuart. She's the Stuart, so Mary, Queen of Scots, her life. So, haha, now we get to dish the dirt. So, she married Guy. His name was Lord Darnley, Henry Lord Darnley. And he was a cousin, which was cool back then. That was not a problem. And because they both were in the line, you know, this was good, like we're keeping the royalty in the family sort of thing. But they got along okay at the beginning, but then things started to change. It seemed like they started to change. And also he started to go with the reformers, and Mary wasn't. And so they weren't getting along as well. And so Mary started spending a lot of time, suspiciously, with the Earl of Bothwell. In fact, the Earl of Bothwell was sick, and she went to visit him and everything, and everybody's like, what's up with Mary and the Earl of Bothwell? One day, she's off. I don't know that she's with the Earl, but she's off. She's away. This is important. Because in her absence, the house blows up. And Lord Darnley is found dead when they get back. Smothered. Not dead from the blast. Oh, I know. Oh, I know. The guy she married. And then, less than 2 months later, she marries the Earl of Bothwell. Boom. I know. I know. It seems suspicious. So, okay, so public outcry is great. I think they rubbed out Darnley. I think they blew him up, smothered him, and then blew him up. Blew his house up. So thereafter, Mary, and finally, she's got the reformers after her on one side, and the monstrous regiment of women book, and then she's got, I think she killed her husband with that other guy. So finally she runs to England. She runs south to England, and she goes to her cousin Elizabeth. You know, they're related. They're cousins several times removed. You know, that first cousins. Oh, Elizabeth, you need to protect me. Elizabeth's like, crud. Here's my problem. I don't remember. I don't remember if he came with her or she ditched him. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't remember. That's key. Shoot, I don't remember. Okay. I'm not pretending to be an expert on the Stuarts. Maybe he ditched her. But I'm not even done. I'm not even done. Buckle your seatbelts, because here we go. So, Elizabeth, like, crud. She's a rival. She's a rival to the throne of England. And she's Catholic. All the people who want to go back to the Catholic Church, they're going to want Mary. They want to bump me off, says Elizabeth, and put Mary in. Because Mary's got a legitimate claim to the throne. Crud. So she puts Mary for 18 years. She puts her in various safe places. Okay, they're very safe. They're so safe that Mary can't really get out, you know. And she's not in prison. It's more like house arrest, okay? And for her own protection, you know. But several people think the Earl of Bothwell has got to be dead or gone at this point, because they're trying to set up marriages for her again. They're trying to, if I married her, we could use her and we could take over England. We could get rid of Elizabeth, we could go back to the church, it's going to be awesome. So she becomes the center of various treasonous plots. You see, we don't know that she instigated them, because she seems like a nice sort. We don't know about her bumping off of husband, though. But, so years later, though, a box of letters appears. Oh, it gets better. The casket letters. It doesn't mean casket like it means just a chest, a box, not like you put a dead body in. And in the casket of letters are letters that appear to be in her handwriting and Bothwell's, with love letters and sonnets and speculation on getting rid of Darnley in writing. Nobody knows to this day if these were legitimate or not, if they were forgeries or if they were real. Nobody knows. I don't know. If your question is, do the letters exist somewhere? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know much, Rhett. But I just think it was more being used. I just feel like Mary, Queen of Scots, is a used woman. Do you know what I mean? She's just like, I just want to get along with everybody, and everybody's using her. So she is finally condemned to death because of treasonous plots and because possible murder implication for her husband 20 years ago now. And they chopped off her head. Well, she was gone. If he was, and he got smothered. He didn't die in the blast. I am sure there is. I don't know. But yeah, you know what? If you guys learn anything else, if you take a fancy to this and you learn anything else, you let me know. Or if you find a good book or movie about it. I have no idea. I'm sure there must be something. Her name's Mary, Queen of Scots. Or Mary Stuart. She and Darnley had a son. He also did not come to England with her. He stayed in Scotland for his own safety. Her son grows up to be King James of Scotland, but when Elizabeth dies, he becomes King James of Scotland and King James the First of England. And he is the James who commissioned the King James Bible. Boom! The story is complete.
His mom married all these people, so that once they die off, there's only one child.
It's true.
All the places where they that could be a funny plot.
I don't know. Well, you'll have to look into it. Yes, Rhett. Oh, Rhett has the scoop.
I don't know how close this is to it, but I just searched Mary Stuart movie, and there's one called Mary Queen of Scots on
Okay. Yes, be careful. Please don't just run off to do Mary Queen of Scots video research and then watch some rated R monstrosity. Please don't. sully your eyes or your mind.
Description looks like what you're saying.
Okay. So there's got to be a PG version, or books are always good. But okay, so that is the story of John Knox in Scotland. John Knox is the and the church in Scotland is the forerunner of the modern day Presbyterian church. But Presbyterians do celebrate Christmas and feast, and it's not, and they're not running around making laws for everyone. Do not connect Presbyterianism necessarily with what I've described here with John Knox. But they are the spiritual descendants of the church started in England, the Reformed Church under John Knox. Okay, the next question I asked you was, give me some people who translated the Bible into English before the Reformation, or before 1600, I guess. That's during the Reformation. Give me some. Yeah. Okay, Coverdale, Tyndale, Wycliffe. Wycliffe. Some people say Wycliffe and some say Wycliffe. I don't care, and I don't even know which is right. Maybe neither one of them matters. There's an organization still today called the Wycliffe Bible Translators. I knew a couple that worked with them, and they go in still and they translate the Bible into languages into which it has not ever been translated. Some of these people don't even have a written language, and so they have to construct the language. So these people are linguistic experts that go in and do this work so that these people can have the Bible in their own language. Why did the church have a problem with some of these Bibles? What was the problem, Lauren? They changed words. That's one of the problems. Let's talk about that problem first. So, for example, this always helps. I always think I can do it. Oh, I can do it without the class. No, you can't. I'm just going to read the whole paragraph. The first objection to his work was that he had written glosses, comments on certain passages. So it wasn't just a Bible, and this was Tyndale's Bible. He wrote little messages in the margins or footnotes telling you what it meant. And I said, well, that doesn't seem harmful. Well, but you read the same passage, and that's the whole point. The church, the Catholic Church, read some things, and they disagreed with the Reformers about what it meant. They didn't disagree about what it said. They disagreed about what it meant. And so he was writing little notes in the margins. But the other one is what Lauren said. And that his translation, together with the glosses, was heretical. For example, he had used the such words as congregation instead of church, and elder instead of priest. Now, you might look at me like kids yesterday did. Like one of them even said, "Who cares? What does it matter?" But think about it. Congregation sounds very local. Like we talk about a single congregation, don't we? The church that you attend on Sundays, that's the congregation, that group of people. But the church is big, right? The church is universal. The church is Catholic. Catholic means universal. That's what Catholic means. So they were making it sound, according to the church authorities, he's making it sound like the individual congregations can just do whatever they want without any overarching support of the church. And then the same word in Greek is translated priest and elder. See, in our Bibles, that word is never translated priest. I mean, in Protestant. I mean, in Bibles that Catholic and Orthodox use too. It's just not a popular translation anymore. But that's the same word, it means priest. So you see, it depends on what word you choose, sort of what you're insinuating. And so a modern day example, this has been in the news, I don't know, I haven't really followed it closely, but there are modern translations coming up. So you guys are all familiar with the passage in Isaiah, I'm sure. For the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel, right? Which means God with us. which you hear probably every Christmas season, you read, okay? And the same word, I don't know about Greek, don't know that Greek word yet, but in Latin, the same word just means virgin or maiden, all right, a young unmarried woman, right? Virgo virginis, yes. Okay, so new translations are starting to translate that for the maiden. The maiden shall conceive and bear a son. But here's the thing, the insinuation is, think about it, maidens conceive and bear sons all the time. They get married, and in the natural course of events, they become mothers. Virgins don't conceive. Do you see what I mean? And so so when you pick maiden, it makes it sound a little less miraculous. It makes it sound like, well, you know, that's just what happens in the course of events. But virgin is a miracle. And it really matters which word we choose. But the word in the original language means the same thing. I guess that would be Hebrew, not Greek. So does that make sense? So the translators were choosing words that they disagreed about. And Rhett, you wanted to say something. Hey, Rhett, you wanted to say something earlier. Oh, back on Mary. Darnley, Bothwell, her son, James? That was the Earl of Bothwell. Oh, he was King of Scotland. Oh, the plot thickens. Okay, wow. I want to clarify something that I grew up believing, and then I did not find out till not too long ago that I was wrong all those years, and so you can be ahead of me and you can know this isn't true. It is popularly thought that there were no translations of the Bible into modern, what we call vernacular languages, the language of each country, because the church disapproved of giving people the Bible. That is not true. There were 199 different translations of the Bible before the Reformation. I first was alerted to this fact, or led to find out this fact, because I was at a museum and they had some beautiful old manuscripts, and they had a Bible, and it was a German Bible. And I looked at the date and I realized it was before Martin Luther. And I went and got my husband. I thought, wait a minute, the story is always, and Martin Luther translated the Bible into German. He did. He was apparently the 18th person to do so. He translated it in a way that suited him, however. Do you see what I mean? He made the wording support his views. Well, no, not as bad as that. I mean, it's more like what we're talking about. Choosing words, choosing German words that make it sound like it means what he wants it to mean, but they're legitimate German words. Do you see? Legitimate translation. Yeah, that's the trick when you translate, right? We have a word for something, and then in the other language, perhaps there are 3 words for that, and which word do you choose? Which flavor do you want to give it? So that's just not true. The church, well, yeah, I guess. I don't like to say that. I mean, he meant well, but you know, have you ever heard the road to hell is paved with good intentions? You know, saying someone means well doesn't really help. But I just want to clarify that there were lots of Bibles in people's languages that people, if you could read, you could read them. The church did not condemn that at all. They just wanted to make sure it was done properly, and that it wasn't, that the translation was in line with what they interpreted the passage to mean. Finally, what English Bible was most used from 1611 to 1881? Lauren. King James Bible. People, when I was little, actually my first Bible, when I got baptized, and they gave me a Bible, it was a King James. Well, you know what? I did, because it was the only Bible I had, and so you get used to it. Remember, Shakespeare and King James are contemporaries. Shakespeare outlived Elizabeth just briefly, and so the same language applies. So if you get used to one, you get used to the other. I'm not telling you have to read the King James Bible. Like, I'm not saying that whatever Bible translation you have is bad. Don't get me wrong. But it was the standard for beauty of language for a really long time. And many great English writers patterned their language off the writing of the King James Bible because it was just lovely. Yes, Red? Well, they had various English translations. So one of them was called the Geneva Bible because it was printed in Geneva. And they named it after him simply because he paid for it. He hired the guys, he got the crew together that did the translating. He didn't translate it, but he got the guys together that did it. And so, next week we are going to read some sad and sorry stuff about Protestants and Catholics fighting each other and killing each other. And yes, so just prepare yourself. Here's what we want to do, guys. This was just wrong. It's never good to go killing people, no matter what you believe. All right, let's just all agree to that. But let's try to understand why this was so important to them that they would go to battle over it. Now, you will see on the top of your questions, it says chapter 17, part 2. Notice that. There were wars over religion all over Europe, okay? But Dorothy Mills focuses on Spain and France. We are skipping the Spain part, okay? Spain remained Catholic. The uprisings were pretty much squashed, in Spain. Also, most of the famous battles and massacres and things happen in France. So that's the one I want to hit, okay? If you want to read part 1, you go for it, all right? If you're just really interested. But I'm only asking you to read part 2, all right? Everybody got that? And while we're talking about it, I also would like you to read chapters 6 through 8 of The Hobbit. It's fewer chapters, but one of the chapters is really pretty long, so it's about the same number of pages. I just go by pages instead of chapters. And then the last thing we need to do is talk about your paper. And then we can finish talking about Macbeth. And I remember what I told you to remind me. I want to talk about them having total mental breakdowns, both of them. But Lady Macbeth, seriously, mental breakdown. And then we'll talk about The Hobbit a little bit. So, here, we got this here. We are writing a paper on whether or not, or who was most responsible for and you know what, there was a misunderstanding yesterday, so I should clarify this. I said for Macbeth's fate, and one of my students thought I just meant his death. I mean everything that happened in the play. Is that clear to everybody? Who is more responsible for the entire plot, not just his death at the end? And so we are choosing either Macbeth or the witches are more responsible. Yes, let me get to that. Yes, Rhett, I keep getting tangled here. Yes. Yeah, sometimes I say something wrong, so. Did you already make an outline? Okay, we're actually gonna start. No, it was fine. If you didn't make an outline, don't worry. If I said that, I'm sorry. I get mixed up. Sometimes on the spur of the moment, I just decide things, and then I forget I decided it. Also, I write those emails on Sunday or Monday, and then I come to class and I just, I'm gonna change it. Your parents already have today's email, so anything I change. I'm sorry. Do what I say. Listen to what, do as I say, not as I write. Okay, so we're going to have an outline. And last week we came up with a lot of interesting, compelling reasons. I feel like on both sides. We had a pretty good thing going. One of the things when we look at who's responsible that's sometimes helpful is to look at what happened and then extrapolate from that. So I want to just take a moment to talk about what happened to Macbeth and Lady Macbeth in that second half of the play. Why did Lady Macbeth lose her mind, do you think? Well, that is something that hadn't occurred to me. That is something that had never occurred to me. I was thinking for another reason, but that's guilt. Do you remember? Okay, let me try to find it here. I brought my book. Ooh, yes, she did. At the beginning, do you remember? She does this soliloquy. You know, she's talking to herself after she reads that Duncan is coming and that Macbeth met these witches and what the witches said, and she says, "Come, you murdering ministers, and take my milk for gall." In other words, I'm a motherly, womanly type. I don't want to be. I want to be bitter and tough like vinegar, right? She asked for it. And I'll tell you what, you don't invite demonic powers in and ask them to do stuff for you without paying a price, right? The bill always comes due. You don't mess with that stuff. Yes, right. Yes. 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 Oh yeah. No, and this isn't a theological treatise, right? But they've actually, obviously, been playing with powers, or powers have been playing with them. So, you know, do you remember, I'll just remind you, because it's been a few weeks since you read it, so Lady Macbeth has a habit of walking the house at night. Do you remember that right after Macbeth killed Duncan, he came and he said, "Methought I heard a voice say, 'Sleep no more. Macbeth has murdered sleep.'" And she says, I don't remember exactly what she says, but this is a paraphrase, "Oh, get over it." You're just imagining things. In fact, she says, he says, okay, I haven't found my page yet, but I get excited about this. He says, "Will all the ocean wash these hands clean with his blood on them? No. If I wash my hands in the ocean, I'll turn the ocean red before the ocean will cleanse me." And she says, "A little water clears us of this deed. Go wash your hands. That's it. Nobody's going to know. It's not ink, for crying out loud. It'll come right off." But when we meet her towards the end of the play, they've called in a doctor for her. And, oh, I've passed it. Hang on. Be patient. Well, I know it's right there. There's the doctor. Okay. So the doctor and the serving lady are watching her. "Lo, you, here she comes. This is her very guise, and upon my life, fast asleep. Observe her, stand close." The doctor says, "How came she by that light? She's got a candle. Should sleepwalking people be carrying fire? I don't know." "Why, it stood by her. She has light continually. 'Tis her command. You see, her eyes are open. Aye, but their senses shut. what is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands. Don't know. Well, okay, I'm rubbing with the book in my hands, like you see, like she's got it on a candlestick. I don't know. Use your imagination. You'll come up with it. It is an accustomed action for her to seem thus washing her hands. I have known her to continue in this a quarter of an hour. She says, yet here's a spot. All right, now I'm just going to say what she says now. Out, damn spot. I say, 1, 2. Why, it's time to do it. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie. A soldier and a feared? What need we fear who knows it when none can call our power to account? Yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him? And the doctor says, do you mark that? He says, you have known what you should not, he says to the serving lady. And she says, she has spoke what she should not. They know what they did. She's confessed. And I want to point out something. You know, people swear a lot today. They just do. It's just, I want to get them a dictionary or a thesaurus or something and say, just learn some new words. Just please learn some new words. There's a whole world of words out there. But she calls it a damned spot. And to us, we're thinking, oh, she's getting fierce. She's mildly swearing. Do you know what? She's actually not. She's actually telling the truth. It's damned. It's condemned to hell. That's what damned means. Condemned to hell. She's very, very serious. Shakespeare's very serious about his damned. Like this is condemned. This is condemnation. It's my mark of condemnation. Does that make sense? Like when they use it all the time, it doesn't mean anything anymore. I remember I was reading some Revolutionary War history to my kids, and the British soldier called them damned rebels, and he meant it. He wasn't just being tart. He meant you all are going straight to hell. You're all rebelling against the king. Treason. Anyway, so she has completely lost her mind to the point where apparently she takes her own life. That we never really hear. It says apparently by her own hand. And they report this to Macbeth. And I know I read this on the video, but I'm reading it again. This is his response. And just think, this is what this terrible life of sin, deep crime, has done to them. It's made Macbeth throw caution to the wind, right? And it's turned him into what I'm about to read. It made Lady Macbeth lose her mind. And I am very compelled by Matthias's insight into perhaps this is also a demonic, she asked for it. But I think Ella is also right. I think there is conscience, the guilt. If you're going to stuff it down deeper in your soul, it's going to come out. Here's his response. Your wife has just died. Not to mention that at this point, Birnam Wood is marching to Dunsinane, which doesn't bode well for him. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That's life. A tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Life is meaningless to him. At the end of the play, I'm not sure he cares whether Birnam Wood comes. I'm not sure whether he cares whether Macduff was born of a woman or not. It's like, get it over with already. I'm miserable. And earlier in the play, do you remember, he's going to kill Banquo, and he says, I have sold my eternal jewel to make Banquo's family kings. I've sold my soul to the devil, we would say. by doing this. These two made a deal with the devil. And unfortunately, Lady Macbeth wasn't as all in as, I mean, she was at the beginning, but she didn't even know about the other ones. And in that Nicole Williamson one, in that BBC version, she gets a little, like the actress plays it like, she's like, what are you doing? What are you gonna do? What are you planning on? And he says, patience, sweet Chuck, or whatever, and just kind of puts her under the chin and smiles. You don't need to know. I've got things planned. You don't need to know anymore. And she's like, oh no, what have we released here? Yeah, I don't want to know. So my question, I guess, is I don't know if that information helps us at all. Unless it's evidence, like Matthias said. Could we blame the witches and say, they may have influenced Lady M's madness and M's, what do we want to call it? Depression? It's more than depression. It's like despair. Or, you see, depending on which side you're on, it could just be their despair was from guilty conscience. You see, and you know what? The problem we're going to have is these might both be true. And so it comes to Ella's question earlier. What if we don't really think that there's one or the other? What if we think it was a joint operation? And what if we think we can make a good argument for each side? Here's what we should do in that case. First of all, we know how to do an introduction, and we know how to do a conclusion. Does anybody need me to go over that at all? I feel like we've done enough of those. We're good. In your introduction, it would be really good to give me the information I need. For example, there's a play called Macbeth, where he kills the king and takes over, and then he gets taken down in turn. Don't give me the whole plot of Macbeth in your introduction. This is not necessary. Just remind me what we're talking about. But this is the part where we're going to make our argument, right? And so, if we think that both of these sides may be to blame, why don't we do 2 paragraphs about one and one about the other? How will you know which one to do 2 on? The one you're leaning towards. All right? If you're not leaning, that's tough. I might say, and we can add a few more things here before we leave this, but the one that you feel has the strongest argument to be made for it. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you have a list of ideas, the one with the longer list, or the one with the things that you think are just really boom, this nails it. This proves that he's responsible, or this proves the witches are responsible. And here's how I would do it. Pretend I really think it's Macbeth's fault. He did it, right? It was his hand. It was his choice. Nobody put a gun to his head and said, you go kill the king. We would not say he was under compulsion. So maybe I think it all boils down to that. I feel like Macbeth, these guys helped, but I feel like it was him. Pretend that's me. I might come to my paper and I might say, I'm going to argue the weakest one first, the one I'm not as strong on, and then finish strong with why it's Macbeth's fault. Does that make sense to everybody? When we argue, and by argue, I don't mean have a fight. Okay, I just mean give reasons for what we believe. When you're writing a paper, start with your weakest. Whatever you think is your weakest argument, throw it out there and get rid of it, and just throw it out there for your reader. And then finish with your strongest one. So the last thing they read is a thing like, wow, she really proved this point. I'm impressed. Because if you leave them with your weakest point, they forget your stronger points. Like, yeah, I'm not convinced. So if I feel more it's Macbeth's fault, I'm going to start with the witches. And then I'm going to give you 2 reasons for Macbeth. So remember how this works. We need a big reason, and then we need support for it. So for example, if I say, it is the witches' fault because they have power, they are ministers of Satan. Well, now I need to prove to you that they're ministers of Satan. And how will I do that? I'm writing this paragraph. How am I going to prove to you that I believe they're ministers of Satan? Oh, yeah, I like it. Well, women have beards. I don't know. That's a fairly weak argument, but I'm going to use the play. I'm going to go to the play and say, they cast spells and dance around in the middle of nowhere. They knew Macbeth was coming, and they intentionally went to find him. And they feed him a bunch of half-truths, you know? They don't tell him the whole story about no man born of woman can harm Macbeth. I use the play to prove what I said. Does that make sense to everybody? And then I will go on to say, but although the witches might be partially to blame, it is Macbeth who really did the deed, you know. And you know, he was egged on by his wife, but at one point he was going to say no. Remember? We will go no further in this business, he told her. Nobody made him go on and kill Macduff's kids and servants, for crying out loud. And he planned Banquo's thing purely by himself. See, and that could be my support. So in each of these cases, your support is going to come from the play itself. On the flip side, maybe you don't agree with this at all, and you really think the witches did it. Like Macbeth was just a pawn in the witch's hand. Then I'm going to start talking about reasons why Macbeth might be blamable, but then I'm going to hit really why the witches are to blame. Does everybody feel like you can write this? Okay. Yes. Yes. And again, why it matters is a loose description of it. Sometimes it's just hard to say. I mean, why does it matter? Don't kill the king. Like, what do we learn? I guess we could learn don't mess with satanic entities, or don't committing heinous acts, as they say, horrible acts against one's conscience leads to a bad end. Mm-hmm. Yes. The high school kids are reading Plato and Aristotle right now. And we're talking about the fact that we're going to talk about it. Well, I guess Plato talks about this a little bit. That the actions you commit change the kind of person you are, right? That we have power over the kind of people we are by the habits that we cultivate and the things that we do. C.S. Lewis said the same thing. He said, everything we do leaves a little mark on your soul for good or bad. It's a scary idea. Every time I deny my rights and defer to someone else in charity, I've left a really good mark, and it makes it easier to do it next time. But every time I just bully someone, I just take what I want, I've left a little mark, and it's going to make it easier to do that next time too. So, and we see that in Macbeth, don't we? It just gets easier and easier to the point where he says, you know, I'm wading across a river of blood, and I'm so far across it doesn't matter now whether I go back or go forward. I might as well just keep going.
Yeah, like it was, I was surprised that he still, I don't know, like actors or something, like,
Yes. When he was so nervous about killing Duncan, and then it's easy to kill the servants. And then how do you get to the point where Banquo was his good friend? That you hire hitmen for your best friend. And then you send people in to just wipe out indiscriminately the entire household. It's bad. I don't want to make, and if you guys don't need us to, I don't want to make a more detailed outline because I really want to hear what you have to say. I don't want to feed you ideas. I want you to give me ideas. So I just want to make sure that we're all okay, that there's enough material. Is there anything else that happened in the play that you just like to discuss or talk about? Question, comment?
I really like that like it was, at first it's like kind of addicting, like, oh, I can stop listening to this, and then like,
It's not pleasant, and it's not meant to be pleasant. Do you know what I mean? We don't want reading about murder to be pleasant, although it's important because, the Bible is full of things that aren't very pleasant too, if you think about it. And you might question, why is this in here? Really, on the stuff that they don't put in the children's Bibles. Do you know what I mean? And you might think, what? But there's a point. And it is a terrible, oh no, I won't tell you the story. Never mind, you can find out for yourself. I've given you enough gloom, doom, and death for one day. We've blown up Lord Darnley and smothered him and executed Mary, and it's been a violent day. Let's just let it rest. I hope that you will read other plays. I'm sure that as you get older you will, but watch them. You can also, even though I know the language is tough, if you get a copy of the play or something, and if all of them are on BritBox, and you can find just recorded versions of the stage plays, it really helps you figure out what's going on when you watch the people doing it. It just wasn't supposed to just be read. I didn't know the story of Hamlet before, and I was 12 or 13, and it just so happened it was Derek Jacobi's Hamlet, so I had to watch it. My mother called up and said, Claudius is doing Hamlet, and I'm like, oh, I've always been curious about that. So I just sat down and watched it. I didn't have a book, and you could follow it okay. I couldn't follow everything, but so if you want recommendations for what should I read now if I want to read another Shakespeare play, I will tell you. Some of you read Julius Caesar with me last year too. Okay, that done. Please write that paper next week for me. Bring it in next week. I want you to do both kinds of parallelism and a strong verb and alliteration. Is that all we've been doing so far? Oh, simile. And we're going to add one more thing. But you know what? This is your last big paper of the year. Well, probably, we don't have very many more times here. We only have 3 more times. So I can only, and that's only 2 more assignments, because I'm not going to give you an assignment on the last day, because that'd just be weird. I don't know what I'm going to do about the day we miss. I might give them double what Dorothy Mill's reading or something. I think we're going to get done with The Hobbit before, so we'll see. But we might do some writing, but something different. Yes, Jesse? Well, I don't do that. I feel like if you're here and you read and you can talk about things and write the papers for me, I really don't need to quiz you on the details. That's not important to me. Okay, so, and all my papers are sort of like the questions that I would ask you anyway. So, the new thing we're going to do, you will laugh at the name, it's okay. Assonance. Oh, nobody laughed. You're a very refined, mature group. Usually it's assonance. Assonance is like alliteration. Alliteration is the same beginning sound. Assonance is repeating a vowel sound in the middle of a word, and I just did it. A vowel sound. Ow, ow. Notice it's not spelled the same. I don't care. I care about what it sounds like. So if I say, the dog thought the fog was hot. That's a stupid sentence. But I don't know why the fog's always cold anyway. But that would be assonance. Do you see how I said ah over and over? It's like those Bob books, or the books that little kids read when they just learned the short vowel sounds, you know. Well, 3 is nice. 3 is always nice because it sounds like you didn't do it by accident. You probably shouldn't just put ass in the margin. You could underline it. I don't know. If you put ass, I know what it means. So, you know, the big, short vowel sounds, those are easy. But what's another one where we have a lot of ones that are the same? I said thought, taught, that's a different one. Well, thought, I'm looking for different ways of spelling it. Pot, hawk. Well, caught is like taught. I'm looking for different ways you can spell it. So I have O-U-G-H, A-U-G-H, O, A-W. Sometimes father, you see, has an ah sound. All of these have an ah sound. Monster. Monsters. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. No, just in the same sentence would be nice, or relatively close to each other. In fact, you might sound like you've gone a little bonkers if you try to always line them up in a row. But it might naturally happen. I mean, when I said vowel sound, I did not mean to do anything with that. It just... Yes, it is possible you could do parallelism 1, alliteration, and, but that would be hard to do alliteration and the same beginning sound and the same vowel sound without writing the same word.
Wait, do they have to be different?
Oh no, I'm just showing, the only reason I did this was to show you that all we care about is the sound. No, they can all be words that have an O in the middle. Dog, pot, hot, tater tot. Well, mother, that's an sound. We don't care how it's spelled, you see. We care how it sounds. This is all about your ears. So not things that spell the same. Just like character starts with CH, but crisp starts with a C, but they alliterate. We don't really, and kite starts with a K, and they all alliterate. Does that make sense? Give it your best shot. Show me what you can do. This is your last hurrah. And whatever else we do will be smaller, I was going to call them fun assignments. Fun for me, maybe. Hopefully fun for you. We shall see. You know, some of them I do. I do read them all, though. It's like I do it 20 times. Yes. No, it'll just be like this. I just have another thing. And actually, I have 2 things to do because you guys quit a week before my other class. I got you a week ahead. Somehow, I think I had you do double at some point. I don't know how it happened. But anyway, it comes out that you guys are lacking 1 week of my classes. So my choice is either try to double you up or just leave some stuff out or just record my final class and that first week of May. If you are interested and you'd like to hear what I have to say, you can watch it online, and if not, not. I don't know, but I do 32 weeks. My classes, I teach 32 weeks, and you guys only do 30. So I have to wiggle it around. So, thank you, Rat. You guys are watching. I'm being recorded. Okay, let's talk about The Hobbit. So you might wonder, I didn't really have time to tell you this. Maybe I did. I can't remember what I tell you guys and what I tell on Tuesday. The reason I chose this is A, because it's an awesome book. B, because Tolkien is a great writer. He uses language well. And do you know what I was reading this? Do you know how much parallelism I saw in this baby? Oh my gosh. And I almost thought, I'm going to start putting flags and read the, and I'm like, no, A, don't do that to them. B, you couldn't have enough flags to put. But listen to the beginning paragraph. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole, with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. He did it twice in the first sentence. Second sentence, first paragraph. Twice, yes, I'm sorry. I'm a little tired. So he's a great writer. But the other reason is because the world of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is really the world of the Middle Ages, if you think about it. These people are living a medieval sort of existence. And this is not a surprise because J.R.R. Tolkien was a professor of medieval literature. That was his job. He was an Oxford professor, as was C.S. Lewis. He was not a writer. I mean, he is a writer, but that was not his job. Why? Oh, maybe I'll read something else. Can I read some other things? Okay. So he knew a lot about what happens in medieval literature and the flavor of medieval times, and he reproduced it. He said that what he did when he wrote The Lord of the Rings, and some of you, if you know something about this world of Middle-earth, there's a book called The Silmarillion, which is the background mythology. It's the creation of the world, basically. You find out a lot about what happens in Lord of the Rings by reading The Silmarillion. It's not an easy read, though. He invented a whole universe, a whole world. It's on many languages. And he said he wanted to give England sort of its own mythological world. Middle-earth, which is what they call this world where the hobbits are, the world of the Lord of the Rings. That's what they called the earth in the Middle Ages. We are in Middle-earth. We are in the middle. We're not in the heavens. We're not in the depths below the earth. We live in the middle place. We are the dwellers of Middle-earth. And so you start thinking, well, is he insinuating this happened a long time ago on our earth? Maybe, I don't know. But, so we meet Bilbo. And Bilbo's got family issues, just like many of us have family issues, things we inherit. Do you ever have anybody in your family, does anybody ever say to you, you're like your, I don't know, great aunt or your grandma or grandpa?
Hey, are you Luann's daughter? Just because of
Well, looking is one thing, certainly, but I'm thinking more of the way you are, like your character or your manner or your behavior. Sometimes things get passed down, and something got passed down to Bilbo. Okay, let me find it. Be patient with me. Oh, I thought it was before that. Well, I'm just going to have to tell. Oh, wait a minute. As I was saying, the mother of this hobbit, of Bilbo Baggins, that is, was the famous Belladonna Took, one of the three remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, the small river that ran at the foot of the hill. It was often said, in other families, that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. That was, of course, absurd, but certainly there was still something not entirely hobbit-like about them, and once in a while, members of the Took clan would go and have adventures. They discreetly disappeared, and the family hushed it up. But the fact remained that the Tooks were not as respectable as the Bagginses, though they were undoubtedly richer. Not that Belladonna Took ever had any adventures after she became Mrs. Bungo Baggins. Bungo, that was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, partly with her money, that was to be found either under the hill or over the hill or across the water. And there they remained to the end of their days. Still, it was probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of his solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his makeup from the Took side. something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins was grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and living in the beautiful hobbit hole built by his father, which I have just described for you, until he had in fact apparently settled down immovably. And he, oh my gosh, has an adventure, just like the Tooks. Yeah, right. Great. Okay. And like a dramatization. Yes. Awesome. Oh, good, good, yes. There are some very good, I'm not familiar with all the ones available, but there are some, great English actors that have done, radio dramatizations, and absolutely, listen to anything and everything that makes it come alive for you. I recommend it wholeheartedly. So dwarves start suddenly visiting him one night. Yes, it was 13 because Bilbo is going to be chosen for the lucky number. Even in Middle Earth here, just like some people in our days, 13 is considered to be not a lucky number, and you don't want 13 people on your expedition. That just bodes ill. So they need a burglar, and they need, because they're going to steal a substantial amount of treasure from a dragon, and they need the lucky number. They need a number 14. And I'm going to read this out loud because I just love it. I think it's hilarious. He squealed, when he heard about the dragon and death and everything, and he had to go lie down, and he was in the other room. And it says, in the meanwhile, however, great bull roarer Took, who was a renowned Took, grandfather of his. Bull roarer's gentler descendant was reviving in the drawing room. After a while and drink, he crept nervously to the door of the parlor. This is what he heard, Gloin speaking, or some snort more or less like that. Will he do you think? It's all very well for Gandalf to talk about this hobbit being fierce, but one shriek like that in a moment of excitement would be enough to awaken the dragon and all his relatives. Killed a lot of us. I think it sounded more like fright than excitement. In fact, if it had not been for the sign on the door, I should have been sure we had come to the wrong house. As soon as I clapped eyes on that little fellow bobbing and puffing on the mat, I had my doubts. Looks more like a grocer than a burglar. Then Mr. Baggins turned the handle and went in. The Took side had won. He suddenly felt he would go without bed and breakfast to be thought fierce. As for little fellow bobbing on the mat, it made him almost really fierce. Many a time afterwards, the Baggins part regretted what he did now, and he said to himself, Bilbo, you were a fool. You walked right in there and put your foot in it. Pardon me, he said, if I have overheard words that you were saying. I don't pretend to understand what you were talking about, or your reference to burglars, but I think I am right in believing, this is what he called being on his dignity, that you think I am no good. I will show you. I have no signs on my door. It was painted a week ago, and I am quite sure you have come to the wrong house. As soon as I saw your funny faces on the doorstep, I had my doubts. But treat it as the right one. Tell me what you want done, and I will try it. If I have to walk from here to the east of East and fight the wild wereworms in the last desert. I had a great-great-great-granduncle once, Bull Roarer Took. And at that point, Gloin interrupts and says, yeah, well, we're talking about you. Why do you think, why doesn't Bilbo just say no? What? Something bubbles up from inside him. And nobody likes to be insulted. Have you ever thought about doing something just because you've been insulted or just, okay? Like we all can kind of appreciate Bilbo, like, little fellow bobbing on the mat, grocer, I'll show you, I'm more than that. And of course he almost instantly regrets it when they start, but yes, Ella. Yes. Relieved, but disappointed. Okay, we're going to do one thing. endeavor not to keep you way over this time. Another medieval pastime that Tolkien was very, very familiar with was asking riddles. And so when Bilbo encounters Gollum in the dark, some of you may know more about Gollum than others, all right? But I'm not going to tell you anything that's not in this book, because that's my job, even though it's hard. But in The Lord of the Rings, you find out much more about this creature, Gollum. They ask riddles. In a game, a gamble, if Gollum wins, he will eat Bilbo. If Bilbo wins, Gollum will show him the way out of the goblin cave tunnels. And so they ask each other riddles. Not riddles like we think of, why did the chicken cross the road? And the answers are usually humorous. These aren't humorous. They're just puzzles. They're just puzzles to solve. And we have Anglo-Saxon riddles from 1,000 years ago or more. But here's the problem. We don't have the answers. So we kind of have to guess. So I flagged several in this book, and I'm just going to read one for time, but I'll bring it back, okay? We'll do some more. But I'm going to read you the one that I think, so they've got suggestions for answers in this book, except one of them, they have no suggestion whatever. One of them, this is it. I saw a woman sit alone. Nothing to say to that. I don't even know what that means. Oh, did I already do this with you? Oh, I brought it. Oh, did I ask you the one about my home is not silent? Oh, I'm sorry. See, I'm losing it. I've got early dementia. Okay, I'm sorry if I did this one already, but I'll do more. Okay, listen. My home is not silent. I myself am not loud. The Lord has provided for the pair of us a joint expedition. I am speedier than he and sometimes stronger. He stays the course better. Sometimes I rest, but he runs on. For as long as I live in him. If we leave one another, it is I who must die. Did I read this one? Do you remember what it is? No. It's like Sunday school. The answer to every question is Jesus. No, I'm sorry. I should mock Sunday school answers. It was fish in a river. Let me read it again and listen. My home is not silent. I myself am not loud. The Lord has provided for the pair of us a joint expedition. I am speedier than he and sometimes stronger. He stays the course better. Sometimes I rest, but he runs on. For as long as I live in him. If we leave one another, it is I who must die. And the fish is speaking, fish in the river. All right, I'm so sorry. I was all excited. Oh, that's not bad. And his home is not silent, because you have thoughts going on in your head. Okay, well, I'll bring this back and we'll try to do one I haven't done before. Does anybody remember if I did a bunch of them or just one? Okay, we'll try to see if I can pick one I didn't already do. No, because you guys got to go. Whoever teaches you next must always be perpetually ticked off with me, because why are they always late? Okay. Good, okay, I won't do that one either. I'll take those flags out. Shoot. See, I get all excited to do something and then I do it early in the year and I forget. All right, off with you. Have a good week. Yes. I am so sorry.